Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, Jeff Waldorf here with you on this Friday afternoon, rocking Deadpool, of course, under a blazer. I'm not sure if that's smart or even fashionable whatsoever, but I don't give two fucks right now because I think it's fucking cool. Judge me all you want. Anyway, so we got a great show for you guys today. On this Friday, we'll be talking about Donald Trump, Michael Cohen. We appear to have some tapes. Weird. We also have, look, it's a Trump day. What day isn't a Trump day? For God's sakes, get the idiot out of office. And all of his crony friends. We have Trump and apprenticeships. That's just, we're going to have fun with that one. White House morale at a very, very new low. Then we go to unfortunate blowback from Russia stuff from centrists. We all knew what was going to happen here. So I will be debunking centrist smears against Bernie Sanders. That's fun, as usual. And, of course, we will have a GOP congressman who's upset that he can't call women names anymore. Fun. So that's kind of the breakdown, what we have today. I also have some announcements. For one, on Sunday, we will be having a broadcast through Get Vocal. It's beta.getvocal.com because it's still a... It's still in the building phases, but it's a social media, of course, broadcast platform. I did a stream on it last Sunday. Some of you guys I know tuned into that. Just 15-minute discussions, so I'm looking for a topic. So if you guys could suggest a topic that you'd like to see us talk about on our Get Vocal stream, something that you'd like us to talk about, and then something that you guys would be willing to respond to or have discussions with each other on the platform. So that's what I'm looking to do. Is I'm looking to start some discussions and have you guys get vocal. So you see what I did there? I'm a genius when it comes to marketing. A marketing genius, goddammit. Came up with that all by myself. Scripts. I don't have no scripts. I have notes, but no scripts. So that's fun. And then, by the way, just to get into local Michigan politics for a minute here, because there was an amazing debate last night between three gubernatorial candidates. That is on the Democratic side. You had Abdul El-Sayed, who is awesome, Shri Tanadar, and Gretchen Whitmer, who's the establishment candidate. They had an amazing debate. El-Sayed crushed it, and he will be coming, to Flint, because he's traveling all over the state, but Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will be with Abdul holding a rally in Michigan July 28th, also in Grand Rapids, July 28th, same day, and I will be trying to get to the Flint one, so hopefully I will be able to get there. That's on a Saturday, and maybe do a stream, and if possible, maybe try to get an interview with Abdul and Ocasio-Cortez. So I will see about trying to set that up and if I can make that happen. So would be awesome. So if you guys are in the area, I know I have some Michigan viewers. Look out for me. I'll see about being there. And also see if maybe I can do a stream or an interview. That would be great. Okay, so that's the announcements that I have here, as far as I can recall. Let's get to the news then. Well, let's start out with fun. And oh my God, Maggie Haberman is trending. Why? Of course, that's why. Okay. Excuse me. Here we go. Realign myself here. Okay. So recently, Donald Trump was doing a signing ceremony for some skills training legislation. So look, I'm all about skilled trades. I worked in welding, if you could believe it. I tried to learn how to weld. It did not go well. It was disastrous. So skilled trades are something that are really important, even though I can't do that. Now, a lot of people tend to look down on people that do the skilled trades, like, oh, why didn't you just go to college? Well, to be fair, a lot of us here with college degrees are sitting there not actually doing the jobs that we need to do, while people out there with certificates in the skilled trades are actually doing fantastic. So, hey, sad day for us, but it just shows you how skilled trades are actually also really important. And so Donald Trump is signing on to legislation that is promoting the skilled trade, and I actually think that's a fantastic thing to do. Now, while doing so, and now we're going to get to some silliness, right? So while doing so, he had a bit of a realization about a previous career before he held the, rank of President of the United States, before he was elected. Let's show you that video of him realizing it in the middle of a speech he was giving during this ceremony. Watch.
Today, 23 companies and associations are pledging to expand apprenticeships. That's an interesting word for me to be saying, right? The apprentice. I never actually put that together until just now. That was a good experience, I will tell you that. Isn't that strange, Ivanka? I never associated, but here we are. Can't get away from that word. It's a great word.
It's a great word. I can't get away from that word. Apprentice. Because I did a show called The Apprentice. Okay, and I never put the two together until actually just now. Wait, you just realized that your show, The Apprentice, is about apprenticeships? I thought it was just me going out and telling people that you're fired. I didn't actually know it was about apprentice. Oh, my God. Oh, Jesus. Ivanka, I never associated. Here we are, apprenticeship. And look, and you can tell what was prepared remarks, right? And if you watch the whole thing, you can tell what's prepared and what's not prepared. So in the middle of his, basically reading the script, he's like, oh, apprenticeship, 2 and 2. Never put that together. Who knew that it was 4? Can you believe it was 4, Ivanka? 2 and 2? Oh, my God. Oh, wow. Strange coincidence. Jesus Christ. This guy calls himself a very stable genius. No, I'm a genius. Very, very stable. In fact, there are 2 things that I'm known for. My mental stability and the fact that I'm really, really, really smart. Good Lord. I know, man. Oh, that's it. That's all I wanted to do. All right, let's move on to the breaking news of the day. So you have some breaking news. Turns out that Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's ex-lawyer, has a few audio tapes of him and the president discussing certain payments to certain people. Now, what exactly am I talking about? What exactly are on these secret tapes? Well, it turns out it's relevant to the case of Karen McDougal. Now, Karen McDougal, of course, was a Playboy model. She's an ex-Playboy model now, who alleges that she had an affair with Donald Trump. Now, for me, I think it's pretty ballsy to come out and admit that you touched that. Like, that you actually touched Donald Trump in his... I'm not even going to go there. Okay. So she comes out and she says that she began a nearly year-long affair with Mr. Trump in 2006. That's shortly after Mr. Trump's wife, Melania, gave birth to Barron. So, for one, you're cheating on your wife. That's classy, right? But then that's classic Trump. What do you expect? Now, that's not really the important thing, right? Now, the important thing is that Miss McDougal tried to sell her story because the National Enquirer was actually very interested. Now, look, the reason that they sell a story, and I actually kind of hate this, to be honest with you, because like, ooh, I had an affair with a celebrity. I'm going to sell it to a tabloid. Yeah, make a lot of money. How sick is this planet? Like, who really cares? But nonetheless, a lot of people care because they pick up and they read it and they love it. So that's what happened here. So she tries to sell this story, and the National Enquirer comes around and says, we're going to give you $150,000 to tell your story. Which is great. Sold. I will go and I will tell my story to the National Enquirer. Now, turns out the National Enquirer never intended on publishing it because the timing here, look, McDougal wanted to tell her story because Donald Trump was in the final days of his, or I should say the final months of his election campaign. So this was kind of big news. And she was like, oh, I want to sell it at this point so that I can make maximum amount of profit. That's what this is about. But the tabloid itself, upon paying the money, just decided they were going to sit on the story. Now that practice is known as catch and kill. So they catch the story and then they kill it by not publishing it. Wonderful. That effectively silenced Miss McDougal for the remainder of that political campaign. So that didn't get out. And look, that was Donald Trump's, that was Michael Cohen's job, is to go and stop those things from getting out that might actually hurt his campaign. That's why he was known as a fixer. So now, turns out, we've got tapes of both Michael Cohen and Donald Trump discussing these alleged payments to Ms. McDougal. So now, that's interesting because it kind of goes against what the White House has actually been saying. Example, when the Wall Street Journal had revealed the existence of the payment, not the tapes, because we just found the tapes, days before the election, Mr. Trump's campaign spokeswoman, Hope Hicks, said that we have no knowledge of any of this. Oh, no, what are you talking about? The payment? No payment. In fact, we've never even heard of it. Who? Karen McWho? What? No idea. You don't know. We don't know what you're talking about. It must be fake news. In fact, that's what the president says. Fake news. Oh no, tapes don't exist. Stormy Daniels stuff doesn't exist. We didn't actually make a payment. Oh, right. Turns out we actually did make a payment. But don't worry. Cohen actually made the payment, but Cohen wasn't reimbursed. Oh, looks like Cohen was actually reimbursed. Thanks to bank records we have. There's a lot of lies to keep straight. I mean, there's so many lies there. Like, I'm having a hard time. And I'm trying to follow this, right? So I can actually explain it to you guys. And, man, it's a lot. But anyway. Now, thing is, that recording, as I said, shows otherwise. So now, Rudy Giuliani, the genius that is Donald Trump's new lawyer, comes out and basically confirms, yeah, okay, so it looks like you've got secret tapes talking about payment. But it turns out that those payments never happen. And so the tapes exonerate Donald Trump, and he didn't do anything wrong. You're going to love this quote. He said, nothing in that conversation suggests that he had any knowledge of it in advance of the payment. He added that Mr. Trump had directed Mr. Cohen that if he were to make a payment related to the woman, write a check rather than send in cash so we could properly document it. Quote, in the big scheme of things, it's a powerful exculpatory evidence. See, turns out that tape is a good thing because it proves that Donald Trump doing anything wrong. Is there any way that he cannot spin something negative? Whew. I mean, the spin here is, if I had hair, it'd be blowing around from all that spin. But anyway, Now, here's the thing, right? So, according to the New York Times, the Justice Department is investigating Mr. Cohen's involvement in paying women to tamp down embarrassing news stories about Mr. Trump. That's the reason they found this entire tape. Prosecutors wanted to know whether that violated federal campaign finance laws, and any conversation with Mr. Trump about those payments would be of keen interest to them. So that's why they're looking into this. That's why the tapes are such a big deal in the news. Well, so let's talk about that, right? Why would it be keen interest to prosecutors? Well, let's see. There's a plan to pay off a model who alleges that Donald Trump had an affair with her months before an election, where that information, if it had come out, would actually be incredibly damaging. Gee, I wonder why it'd be interesting. But Giuliani says, oh, no, we didn't make the payment. So in the end, I mean, we didn't. Well, yeah, that's actually true. So for once, Giuliani is actually not lying. He's like, yeah, we didn't end up making any payment. You didn't. However, your friends over at the National Enquirer. By the way, the National Enquirer is owned by David Pecker. I'm not kidding. That's his name, right? David Pecker is actually a huge Donald Trump supporter. So David Pecker runs this, as I said, National Enquirer is essentially a tabloid rag, conspiracy paper that you find in the grocery store. Not as bad as some of the ones that I've seen before. I mean, Bat Boy Escapes from Prison. I still remember that from when I was like 8. And I'm walking through a supermarket and I see this tabloid that's like, Bat Boy Escaped from Prison. I was like, who the fuck is Bat Boy? And they literally have a drawing of a kid that looks like a bat. But anyway, I know that's my first experience with tabloids, just to let you know what I've seen before. But National Enquirer is not quite that bad, but it's still really bad. So here you have David Pecker, Trump friend, owns this tabloid. Here's a story about McDougal that she's shopping around and goes, boom, let's buy this story. Let's buy it now. Now, McDougal, for all she was concerned, she's like, hey, man, look, I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to get paid. The world is going to know the truth. Okay. Probably not. I think really, to be clear, to be honest, I think it was all about, as I said before, the money. And somebody wanted a payday. And that's fine. She had a story to tell, and somebody was actually willing to buy it. But Pecker bought it for the entire purpose of burying the story. Because think about this. This would have actually sold probably a lot of issues. I mean, candidate Trump has sex with, Playboy model while married to Melania. That sounds like definitely something the National Enquirer would normally run. And that is something that would probably sell them quite a few issues in the grocery stand aisle. But we never saw that because, again, they employed this catch and kill method. And so they murdered the story after they bought the rights to it. Well, there you go. That's what happened. Now, think about it this way, right? If you're unconvinced that they killed it for a political reason in order to protect Donald Trump, consider if President Obama had an affair with someone, while Sasha or Malia, were young or right after they had been born. Would that not dominate every headline? Of course it would. Of course it would. In fact, they would have jumped on it. The National Enquirer would have been first to print that story. But hey, when it comes to Donald Trump, friend of David Pecker, well, of course they're going to protect him. Look, this might not be criminal. No. I mean, considering if it's a campaign violation. But that probably isn't even criminal. Because think about it this way. It's very likely that campaign violations or campaign finance violations, nobody's going to go after them because the FEC is an absolute mess. And it's because of the way that it's been set up. The Republicans don't believe in any sort of campaign finance regulation. So when they sit on the board, they're just going to sit on their hands. No, we're not going to go after any campaign violators that are wealthy. And of course, the Republicans on the board especially are not going to go after Donald Trump. Very, very obvious, because look at the way that Republican politicians in Congress treat Donald Trump. He is the alpha male. They bend over and then give them, and then give Donald Trump their bananas. And if you're wondering what that's from, it's more of like a dominance thing, because he is the alpha. He is the authoritarian in chief, and these Republicans will always bow down to him, so long as the Republican base is behind Donald Trump, and they still are massively. But anyway, now here's the thing. It does show that Donald Trump's an enormous liar. I know, that's probably not a surprise. In fact, look, that's why Cohen, flipping is such a big deal, right? Because this isn't the only tape. There's more than one tape. In fact, there's probably a lot of tapes. In fact, let me go to Raw Story here on that. For one, according to a statement read by John King, who is a television host, he said, "The president said, 'I can't believe Michael would do this to me.'" Okay. And also, Michael Cohen has other recordings in his records that were seized by the FBI. That's CNN's Oliver Darcy reporting that. He also said the knowledge of Trump's reactions came to the network from an unnamed source close to the matter, as well as Rudy Giuliani. Oh boy. Now, as far as Cohen is concerned, he has not made a statement on this. In fact, Cohen's lawyer, Lanny J. Davis, said, quote, "We have nothing to say on this matter." So, when asked about the tape. Fascinating. Now, look, personally, if you don't think Trump slept with those models, what planet are you on? He totally did. Yeah, of course he did. And that's, look, not only that, but of course, paid them off. Now, do you think this will impact the election? No, it's very, very unlikely. I got news for you guys. Trump supporters are not going to care. And as I said before, campaign finance violations, very unlikely to be enforced. So what the fallout of this will be is likely probably nothing. Yes, it proves he's a massive liar, proves he's a cheater, but then again, we already kind of knew that. So I guess at the end of the day, what we need to do is look, if you want to defeat Trump, this is not the way to do it. These stories are interesting. They're very salacious. And they do show you what kind of character or what kind of characters Donald Trump surrounds himself with, as well as what kind of character Donald Trump himself is. But at the same time, if you want to win an election, you run on issues. You don't run on Russia. You don't run on Stormy Daniels. What you do is you run on policy. And that actually does win. So that's just the message that I want to leave you off with here. As far as Cohen is concerned, well, depending on what kind of deal he might strike with the investigators, well, he might be in very big trouble or not. We'll see. Okay. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We've got more stories for you guys, so stay right here. Please make sure to share the stream. That's really important. And if you like what we're saying right now, you can give us a like. Also, I would like suggestions for a topic to do on Sunday's Get Vocal stream. So if you guys could tweet that to me or let me know what you want us to talk about for 15 minutes, for our 15-minute segment, please let us know. All right. We'll be back. Round the Nation, right here, TYT Nation, in a minute. So stay right here. Welcome back to the show. Round the Nation right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. You know what I forgot to put in that story? I forgot to talk about tapes, right? Because there was actually a hilarious tweet looking back on it now from Donald Trump about this. You guys remember back when James Comey had been fired from the FBI. This was last year. And Donald Trump was talking about, I hope there aren't tapes of our conversations. In fact, here's the tweet. James Comey better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. Ironic. Turns out there are tapes. But there are tapes of you and Michael Cohen attempting to pay off a former playmate. I'm just saying. Karma. It's a little bit of a bitch. Anyway. Damn. If only I had remembered that. Okay. Anyway. So let's move on here. Let's go to morale. How's the White House feeling? Not so good. So on Monday, Donald Trump had a summit with Vladimir Putin. They had a news conference, and then, of course, there was a private meeting, which we don't know what happened. It was just Putin and Trump and the interpreters, which is kind of weird. But nonetheless, that happened. And during that press conference, of course, you had President Trump basically bowing down, very servile, to Vladimir Putin. Now, the result of this is a White House that is basically looking to pull the chute. Now, Politico explains that President Trump's disastrous performance since his news conference alongside Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin has sent West Wing morale to its lowest level since the Charlottesville fiasco almost a year ago. So Charlottesville is, of course, there was massive protests by white supremacists, neo-Nazi groups, the Ku Klux Klan. They got together to try to protect their Southern Confederate heritage, right? Now, that was the same rally where angry white supremacists were holding up tiki torches and screaming, "Jews will not replace us." Now, that's the same place, the same rallies and demonstrations and protests where Heather Heyer was murdered. She was ran over when one of these white supremacists ran their car into a bunch of counter-protesters. So, already not looking good. So, the problem with that and the reaction from the White House is you had President Trump basically saying, good people on both sides. No, you have white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and Klan members saying Jews will not replace us, blood and soil, white supremacist chants. And he's like, good people on both sides. Good people. What are you talking about? So when that happened, Gary Cohen, who's now gone, but at the time, Gary Cohen, that day, was like, that's it, dude. I'm out of here. I'm writing my resignation letter. And he was convinced to stay. And then later on, during the tariff fight, he decided, okay, that's it. Now I've had enough. That was what pushed me over the edge. It wasn't just the white supremacists, him siding with the white supremacists. It was the tariffs. Last straw. Final straw. Broke my back. Wonderful. Now, here's the thing, right? So, that's what happened then. That was a pretty low point in the presidency. Now it turns out that this Putin summit has actually gone even lower. According to one Republican close to the White House, the mood in the White House is basically people are just depressed. They continue saying, nobody wants to take on the public heat of resigning right now. But there are a bunch of people who were thinking maybe they'd leave after the midterms, who are very seriously starting to consider accelerating their timetable. So basically, they're looking around at this flaming ship, or you could compare this to the fucking Hindenburg. It's on fire, it's going down, and they're looking around. They're going, so when should I pull this ripcord? I mean, when's a good time to bail? Now's a pretty good time to bail. Now's the time. In fact, you probably should have never been in there if you had any sort of self-respect. But a lot of these people didn't and were like, I don't know, I can get connected. I can build out my political resume. No, dude, Donald Trump is a black hole. He's got the Midas touch, only everything he touches turns to shit. So it's like the turd touch. And so that includes your career. You're going down. So, again, he's a black hole. He sucks everything into it. That includes your career. Shit, there are Trump staffers in D.C. that can't even find a date. Because as soon as people learn that they're in the Trump administration, they're like, nope, I don't want anything to do with you. You might as well just swipe left. Get out of here. So, look, they're looking around for a place to bail. They should have bailed a long time ago. But anyway, look, Politico also notes, however, that the president's usual defenders, many of whom have been critical of him in public, and almost all of whom are privately disappointed by his performance, so everybody's not happy with him, say the following. While Trump's statements are regrettable, they have few, if any, policy consequences. No policy consequence. Oh, really? Here's a policy consequence. Donald Trump will not enforce the sanctions passed by Congress. Now, whether you disagree or not with those sanctions, they were passed by a majority. Even Republicans voted in favor of these sanctions against Russia. This is they voted in such a large amount that they could override a presidential veto. Donald Trump will still not put those sanctions into effect. He just won't do it. He's in the executive branch. He is supposed to execute the will of Congress. He's not doing so. So that's kind of an example of this policy-wise. Not the statements himself, right? But as far as bowing down to his performance, but he basically was bowing down to a foreign leader and being very, very deferential to him. Even putting our own intelligence down and basically saying, no, you're right, Putin. America is stupid. We are weak, and our intelligence is wrong. And you guys are fantastic. In fact, one of the arguments that was used by Putin to say that the hacking did not happen, our hackers are so good, you never would have found them. And Donald Trump says, oh, you know what? You're right. That's a great argument. Why didn't I think of that before? You're right. Our intelligence agencies are so crappy and terrible that they could never find out if you hacked us, Vlad. So he's basically was on an America Sucks tour. And yet, President Obama, to go back to when he bowed just a little too far to the Japanese prime minister. Bowed just a little too far. Republicans were outraged. Now Republicans, there was a recent poll where a huge majority of Republicans absolutely loved the summit. They approved of it. They couldn't get enough of it. Yes, bow down to that authoritarian. And now we bow down to you. So the president's usual defenders in the administration, again, are staying. This is people like Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and National Security Advisor John Bolton. Those people do have an impact on policy. So they're very, very unlikely to to step down. In fact, they're going to double down and be like, no, the administration, we're going to stay in the administration. Now, John Kelly, however, that is, that's different, right? Because I don't even know, I'm not convinced that he'll even make it to the midterms. I think by the end of the summer, he's going to be out. He's already been basically cut off. They're having meetings without John Kelly, and John Kelly is the chief of staff. But anyway, he wouldn't be alone because turns out this administration has had incredibly high turnover. In fact, it's got the highest turnover of any presidency. I kid you not. This is according to an Associated Press analysis. The Trump administration has had a staff turnover in excess of 37% over the calendar year ending June 30th. That is just 1 year. In total, his entire administration, some 61% of Donald Trump's senior-most aides have left the White House. You know what the next highest was? It was actually Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton had 42% of his senior aides leaving the White House. Donald Trump took that record and shredded it. 61%. That is over half of all the people that have worked for Donald Trump in the White House that have resigned. And you know what? There's a lot of them that are facing criminal indictments. Oh, but it's a witch hunt. It's a witch hunt. And after Monday, the calls for more mass resignations continued. In fact, here you have a New York Times columnist, Bret Stephens, who on Thursday wrote an op-ed saying that, hey, look, assuming Mike Pompeo and Bolton still have their senses intact, they should resign following the epic disgrace of the U.S.-Russia summit in Helsinki on Monday. So should their senior staff. Now, I got to note that Bret Stephens knows and respects both men. Well, look, I don't know, nor do I respect any of those people, and that includes Bret Stephens. See, here's the thing. Pompeo and Bolton are incredible extremists. They are neocons, they are war hawks, they are right-wing extremists. They're not going to leave. They're not going to resign. Come on. Not unless they get embroiled in any sort of scandal that makes the president look bad. But they're not. And so I think they're going to be there come hell or high water until somebody has to escort them out. Nonetheless, that brings me to another thing. If more staff get replaced, well, then if they resign, they're going to get replaced by people who are basically even more sycophantic towards Trump. And if you think it's bad now, like, because we already kind of have that already, it could get worse. In fact, Corey Schock, head of the International Institute for Strategic Studies, had urged staff that are already there to stay in. Now, this was an op-ed wrote in The Atlantic. They said, we should not want the moral satisfaction and practical devastation of clearing out people of conscience and allow the president to replace them with more malleable or compromised people. I have to say, she does make an interesting point. But overall, I tend to think that anybody in the administration who's still there is already malleable and already compromised. But that's just me. But still, the administration has proven that even when you think you hit the bottom of the barrel, and I've thought that many times, turns out that barrel just keeps getting deeper. Because at the end of the day, there is no bottom to it. Okay. So, again, I'm going to take a real quick break here. We'll come back. We got more stories, so stay right here. Super chats, leave them if you want to. That goes to help the show, and we'll be right back. Around the Nation. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here too. All right. We have more, but first we got a super chat that I want to read from Coffee Crow. He says, he or she, I forget. I'm sorry. I'm terrible. Every time a Trump supporter realizes their mistake, I can't help but think, womp womp. I love that. That, of course, reference to Corey Lewandowski and his terrible womp womp. I love it. I think I might start using that. Whenever something happens, bad happens to a Trump supporter, womp womp. Sad. Anyway, let's move on. More stories. So let's get into the centrist smear. Yay. Oh, before I get into that, there is another super chat that I want to read. Elwell says, Putin says Trump gave up Crimea and other parts of Ukraine during private summit. Oh, my God. That just makes me think of, like, don't give away the store or don't give away the country when you tell somebody, like, during negotiations. Well, it turns out Trump may have given away the store. Idiot. Moron. Dumbass. Ugh. Oh, the sooner he's gone, the better. Okay. Anyway. Now let's get to the next story. Okay. So I've talked about a lot about the Mueller investigation. That, of course, is the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election. And, of course, the special counsel is attempting to find evidence of collusion. So that would mean, members of Donald Trump's campaign or Donald Trump himself possibly working with the Russians to go and subvert democracy. Now, that, of course, is the overall investigation, which has had a spin-off effect to a lot of other investigations, for example, one into Paul Manafort. Now, Paul Manafort, of course, has been indicted. He's actually been put in jail, and his trial is beginning. So, in that trial, there are documents that have been released that are being used in this trial. In fact, Manafort had been accused of hiding cash he made while working in the Ukraine in order to avoid taxes and lying about his debt so he could get additional loans. So that, of course, is some of the stuff that Manafort is in trouble for. Now, in June, Manafort was also charged with obstruction of justice and conspiracy against the United States. Not only that, Manafort has been accused of witness tampering and has been indicted on money laundering charges for failing to register as a foreign agent. Now, that is actually very relevant because within these same documents, there is a curious name that happens to come up. That name, along with Manafort, happens to be Ted Devine. Now, wait a minute. Ted Devine? He happened to be the former campaign manager for Senator Bernie Sanders. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Hold. Now, the Washington Post has reported recently that Devine, a federal political strategist, also worked for Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych and his pro-Kremlin party of regions at the time between February 2010 until June of 2014. So what this is that, of course, this is a trial against Paul Manafort for taking that money and hiding that money and also lobbying on behalf of party of regions without actually saying that he's a lobbyist according to the United States. So you didn't register as a lobbyist. That means you're in trouble and you're also hiding your money. Now, Manafort worked with Devine. Now, Devine, they worked at the same firm. So understand that. They were co-workers, essentially colleagues in the same place. Now, Manafort is in trouble. Devine is not. It's probably because Devine didn't actually do any of the stuff that Manafort is accused of doing. Nonetheless, right? Here you have centrists that are immediately saying, that's it, that's proof, Bernie Sanders, Russian agent. So let me go through the facts, though. Now, here's the thing. So if you work with somebody who does a crime and you have emails with each other that don't involve any sort of criminal things, right, inside of it or any information that could implicate you in a criminal investigation. Should you then be, does that mean you're involved in a crime? Is basically what I'm asking. No. And so what's going on here is that you had Devine and Manafort emailing each other about work. Now, their email exchanges, while working for the Party of Regions, yes, is now part of Manafort's trial. In fact, Devine's name appears 16 times in the documents. But does that mean Devine actually did anything wrong? So far, no. And there doesn't seem to be any evidence. However, centrist Twitter immediately said that's it, Tad Devine, Russian plant, Russian agent, and he's the guy that made Bernie Sanders run against our beloved Hillary Clinton. In fact, on Twitter, there's a centrist Twitter account called the Horse Whisperer. He decided to go tweet a whole thread on this. Now, why that guy is important is because he's actually got about 125,000 Twitter followers. So he's got a pretty decent following on in centrist Twitter. So when he says something, people do listen because he has a pretty wide reach. Now, he wrote a thread and he said, the Russian Devine was communicating with Konstantin Kalimnik. That is another person that he had some email exchanges with while he was working for the Ukraine's Party of Regions. Again, he was working as a lobbyist because it was part of he was working for a consulting firm along with Manafort. Now, Kalimnik, the Horse Whisperer continues, is already under indictment by Mueller. Yeah. And again, what's the point here? Well, he says, Bernie's chief strategist was in touch with Manafort's shady Putin-connected pal right before joining Bernie's campaign. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh what? What exactly do you have? But no, they're like, nailed it. We got him. We got him. Devine was a Russian agent who convinced Bernie to destroy Hillary so that Trump and Putin could win. But wait a minute. If Bernie Sanders had actually won the primary, then he would have went up against Donald Trump. And polling between them always had Bernie Sanders at a huge advantage. Whereas Hillary Clinton, some polls she was ahead, other polls she was not. So campaigning and, not campaigning in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania actually had an impact because those were votes that she ended up missing because people were not engaged. In fact, she turned out less of the vote than Obama had for the Democrats. So what's the point? What's the evidence, right? Well, there is no evidence. This is centrist Twitter freaking out because, oh my God, look at this. We've got one person connected to another person that is connected to the Russians. Cue Glenn Beck with his chalkboard. That's what this feels like to me. Okay. But look, here's another centrist responding to that. He said, I don't have any inside info, but I'll say this. I fucking knew it. Bernie voted against Russia sanctions. Bernie never disclosed his tax returns. The Russians stood to gain by dividing Democrats. Occam's razor is sharp. The razor may be sharp, but you're kind of dull. I mean, your lines of reasoning are incredibly dull if you think that somehow means that Bernie Sanders is a Russian plant. For one, the Washington Post notes that their email exchanges between Manafort and Devine continued until the spring of 2014. And then they stopped. They stopped when Devine went to work for Bernie Sanders later on in that year. So, oh, look, they're no longer working at the same place. They're no longer colleagues. They're no longer lobbying on the same projects. And so they don't talk to each other anymore. How many people do you if you quit a workplace or you go to work somewhere else, how many people do you really keep in contact with? Your coworkers, right? Some do. And to be fair, I have before, but they didn't. Because it turns out Manafort and Devine are two completely different people with two completely different ideologies. One went to work for the Trump campaign. The other went to work for Bernie Sanders' campaign. And those two campaigns couldn't have been different. But anyway, those emails stopped. Now, there was a phone call that was revealed. That phone call actually involved setting up a Sanders-Trump debate. So Jeff Weaver comes over and he says, hey, you knew Manafort. Why don't you call him up and see if he can convince Trump to do a debate against Bernie Sanders? And he's like, you know what? That's a good idea. I'm going to call him up. And maybe, and they had something in the works. And then Manafort had apparently called Devine, and that call reportedly went unreturned. So he did not return that call. But anyway, the fact that they emailed each other while working for the same client at the same company doesn't mean anything. They stopped emailing each other afterwards. And again, what was in those emails, which they have in court documents, are, look, we don't know anything about. We don't know what's inside of them, but it's very unlikely it's going to be anything nefarious. It's probably going to be normal work stuff on behalf of Party of Regions. Now, nonetheless, they're going to still continue to scream, Bernie, Russian agent, Russian agent. Well, look, there's sanctions. He voted against the Russia sanctions. Okay, well, did he? Now, the Russia sanctions bill, there's a little bit of nuance in here. That bill to punish Russia for meddling in the 2016 election actually also included sanctions against Iran. Now, sanctions against Iran, here's the thing. Most people, well, at least Bernie Sanders, most progressives, were actually against that because we're in favor of the Iran deal, right? So here you had Europe attempting to try to save that Iran deal. So Bernie Sanders, of course, is like, hey, I don't want to antagonize the Iranians even more. I actually want them to not pull out of that deal, even though the United States pulled out of that deal because of Donald Trump. I don't want the Iranians to do so. I want them to stay in the deal so they can not develop nuclear weapons. So that's why I'm going to vote no on this piece of legislation. Now, you think they understand this nuance? You think they're going to be like, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense because we're in favor of the Iran deal. Unless the centrists are no longer in favor of the Iran deal, which I have to remind them that President Obama actually made. He made that Iran deal. So, go against an Obama policy or trash Bernie Sanders. I think we know what choice they've made. But anyway, after that, of course, Bernie Sanders did not leave that alone. In fact, he recently introduced a new resolution. This resolution would affirm the findings of the intelligence agencies on Russian meddling. So basically saying, yes, the FBI, all of our intelligence agencies that have looked into this Russian meddling, they're right. I agree with their findings. This is Bernie Sanders in his resolution. Not only that, but it would also demand the already passed sanctions, which did pass, to be fully implemented, which Trump has not done. It would also move to protect the election system, which, by the way, the Republicans voted against protecting the election system, and not accept interference into Mueller's investigation, including the firing of Deputy Attorney Rod Rosenstein. Those things are exactly what a Russian plant would do. I mean, come on. Calling for tougher sanctions or into implementation of the tougher sanctions against Russia. Russian plant would do that. No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. Look, not only that, but Sanders said, Congress must act if they're serious about preserving American democracy. The Congress must make it clear that we accept the assessment of our intelligence community with regard to Russian election interfering in our country and in other democracies, Bernie Sanders said during a Senate floor speech. Now, do you know what happened with that legislation, by the way? It got blocked. Who did it get blocked by? Not Bernie Sanders. It got blocked by Rand Paul. Now, wait a minute. So by the centrist own logic, that would mean Rand Paul is also a Russian agent because he blocked those sanctions. Now, did Tad Devine ever work with Rand Paul? I'm trying to find the Russian connection. No, but it turns out Devine, who did Devine actually work for? He worked with Russian candidates such as Al Gore, John Kerry, Jimmy Carter, and Michael Dukakis. Oh, well-known Russians. Oh, wait. I think the only crime here committed by Tad Devine is that he just keeps on working on losing campaigns. I don't know what it is. He says he's a consultant. And yet, I don't think he's ever won a campaign. At least not in the United States. He's actually won campaigns, guess what? Working with political parties from overseas. In fact, he was in the French elections. He had worked with candidates that had actually won in several European elections. So his work with Ukraine was not just with Ukraine. He had actually done similar things for other countries because he is a political consultant. And if you're mad at that, well, you should also get mad at Obama when he worked with, of course, Emmanuel Macron in his re-election. Or, I'm sorry, in his election. But anyway, look, here's the other thing that Tad Devine also did before working for Bernie. He also helped create superdelegates. Superdelegates are one of the reasons that Bernie Sanders lost to Hillary Clinton. And then, centrist logic, Hillary Clinton lost to Trump, who, guess what? Backed by Russia. So, Devine and the superdelegates, Russian. What if Devine actually wanted Bernie Sanders to lose so that Russia could win? And maybe he also wanted Al Gore to lose in 2000 so that George W. Bush would win so that he could serve 2 terms, then get beaten by Obama, who also served 2 terms, and then to have Hillary Clinton get beaten by Trump, Russia. How ridiculous is this? This is so dumb. Bernie Sanders, look, Bernie Sanders ran a primary because he saw the candidates that were running were not interested in bringing the kind of change that Americans were asking for. Now, the fact that Devine was a political consultant that worked at the same law firm as Paul Manafort and therefore worked with him on lobbying on behalf of the Party of Regions is a big fat nothing burger. That's what this is. And look, even if it's not, even if they find something incriminating in those emails, that in no way proves that Bernie Sanders is a Russian agent, which is ridiculous. I believe in facts, okay? And the facts that we have for Russian meddling and on Paul Manafort are fairly damning and will get adjudicated in court. What we have on Donald Trump is alleged collusion, right? Now, that collusion is speculation, and I've said that over and over again. I do believe that they colluded. I believe they have a deal, but I can't prove it. I don't have any proof, and likely you cannot prove this collusion. And even if you could, collusion itself is technically not a crime. Now, speaking of speculation, the whole idea that Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein are some Russian plants that were there to destroy Hillary Clinton by making her the most disliked candidate, even more disliked than Trump. Oh, wait, no, whoop, that's really not the conspiracy. No, that's actual fact. Hillary Clinton was one of the most disliked candidates and actually more disliked than Donald Trump and more distrusted than Donald Trump. That's not a conspiracy. That's just fact, right? But the speculation comes in that it was some sort of Kremlin-hatched conspiracy to get Bernie Sanders to run a primary. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. There's no evidence. There's no facts to back that up. No. Here's the thing. If this was some Kremlin plot to beat Hillary Clinton, well, then they picked the wrong guy. For one, Bernie Sanders did not win against Hillary Clinton. He had a massive, massive disadvantage. Superdelegates, name recognition, all that stuff. And actually, what worked out better is what actually happened. And that's Bernie Sanders losing the election to Donald Trump. To Hillary Clinton. And then Hillary Clinton losing to Donald Trump. It worked out pretty well, I would say, for them. Look, this is nothing more than a self-serving, ridiculous conspiracy theory hatched by centrists, by unhinged liberals that are still upset that somebody dared to challenge their queen. And to them, I got a message for them. Stop. Get over 2016. It's done with. What happened is what happened. Okay? Right now, we have bigger fish to fry. We have an orange-skinned proto-fascist in office. And you're talking about 2016. And you're talking about people with no proof or evidence that ran a primary against Hillary Clinton, a Democratic primary, which we're allowed to run primaries. That's how you get candidates. That's what happens, being tools of Russia. You're being ridiculous, to quote Sarah Silverman. Get over it. Get into the modern day. It's 2018 now, and we need to get together to kick the Republicans' ass and to destroy Donald Trump's presidency, to end it. Get off your conspiracy bullshit, and let's move on. Okay. I think I'm fairly clear about that. Okay. Those stories took a lot longer than I thought they would. Luckily, we're going to do one more story here, even though we are massively over time. So, let's just do that. So Republican Jason Lewis is a congressman from Minnesota, and he has a bit of a history of saying controversial things. Well, it turns out, like me, he's a bit of a personality, right? Now, CNN's K-File had reviewed several months of audio from his podcast. Turns out he had something called The Jason Lewis Show, which was a syndicated radio program Lewis had hosted from 2009 until 2014. Now, here's what's hilarious. It actually had the tagline of America's Mr. Right. Well, we'll see if that holds up. But first, the reason that this matters is because Lewis won his election. In fact, he had won in Minnesota, and now he is up for re-election in Minnesota's 2nd District. Now, he's actually considered to be one of the most endangered House Republicans coming up in the midterm. And that's why this is important. In fact, CNN rates his race as a, quote, toss-up. So anything could happen, right? He could be defeated. And so it turns out that some of his old audio has come to light. And look, it was used during his first election against him, and it has returned. Now, in this audio, Lewis can be heard on the radio speaking about women's issues. Now, look, I'm not going to give you any context right now, but we'll go in and basically we'll listen to it and determine whether or not if he is indeed America's Mr. Right. Let's take a listen.
Well, yeah, let's say it's all true. She's a feminist activist who thinks birth control ought to be free. Now, does that mean you should call her a slut?
Oh, no. No, I think Rush probably blew it. I mean, his explanation this afternoon was one that I thought would have been much more powerful and much more to the point.
Well, the thing is, can we call anybody a slut? This is what begs the question. Take this woman out of it. Take Rush out of it for a moment. Does a woman now have the right to behave? And I know there's a double standard between the way men chase women and you know, running around. You know, I'm not going to get there, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But it used to be that women were held to a little bit of a higher standard. We required modesty from women. Now, are we beyond those days where a woman can behave as a slut, but you can't call her a slut?
I mean, look, what if I want to call her a slut? Am I not allowed to call her a slut? I want to. I really want to, because that's what I think was going on. Now, look, let me give you the context to that now. This was in reference to Sandra Fluke. Now, this is, of course, ancient history, because the Trump years have been moving at about a million. No, they've been feeling like a million years. But anyway, Fluke, who was a law student at Georgetown at the time, was in the center of a national controversy after she was attacked by radio host Rush Limbaugh. Now, in her testimony to Congress, to a Democratic congressional group, she said that students paid as much as $1,000 a year for contraceptives and made the case that religious institutions should cover birth control. Now, Lewis, of course, was a regular fill-in for Limbaugh's radio show. And, of course, he said, hey, man, look, you got these women with contraception. Well, if they're taking contraception, they must be having sex, right? So Limbaugh, no, right on the money. In fact, you know what? Can we still call them sluts? I mean, if that's what they're doing. I have another clip here that I'm going to play, which he explains, of course, Limbaugh's reasoning more in depth about and why he should be able to call these women sluts. Watch.
Demanding that the taxpayers pay for your contraception. You must use a lot of them, and therefore, ergo, you're very sexually active. And in the old days, what we used to call people who were in college or even graduate school who were sexually active, we called them sluts. Especially if you want somebody to pay for it. Now, you know, obviously that's a stretch. It was meant as an aspect of entertainment radio. But have we really got to the point where you can't refer to Madonna as a slut without being sued? I mean, Madonna has had a series of lovers, has had many in Hollywood. And in the old days, what did we call those? Madonna dresses up in these sort of prostitute-like outfits on stage, and she goes there and she sings and she shows half of her body. What did we call those people 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago? You can't do that today. It's too politically incorrect. But be that as it may, that we are losing the language. The idea that the second-ranking Democrat in the federal government's House of Representatives would threaten to censoriously sue Rush Limbaugh or have the students sue him ought to terrify every single American who cares about the First Amendment.
All right, so let's break that down, right? So this is basically saying, hey, man, look, you dress like a slut, we're going to call you a slut. That's, damn. For one, that's wrong. Okay, so let's go back here. Let me add in that during a December 2012 segment on changes in culture, he said, only we can tell our young women, don't look like some slut and you won't get hit on. So that is classic blame the victim, right? So in this case, you don't want to get hit on, don't put on that skimpy dress. Boy, you sound a lot like those people in Tehran or in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Why you show your elbow at all? You know that's how you get hit on. No, don't do that. Don't ever blame somebody for either getting hit on or getting raped for what they're wearing. It's not about that. And again, this guy is playing to those old stereotypes like political correctness. Why can't I call a woman a slut if I think she's a slut? It's ridiculous. But let's go back to Sandra Fluke and birth control, right? Because that's also one of the main points that he was making is, look, if you're using birth control and if you're demanding that taxpayers pay for your birth control, you must be using a lot. That's not how it works. You don't pop one every time you have sex. He's an idiot. And look, I can point that out, right? Now, birth control, for example, is not just for sex, I mean, obviously some people don't know that. But what it can do is that it can also regulate women's reproductive system. In fact, in addition to the regulation of menstrual periods, you also have the effects of it can decrease the intensity and pain of menstrual cramps. Well, that's helpful. That's definitely a quality of life issue because a lot of women have very difficult periods. And I know it's something that like a dude doesn't think about, but women even miss work or school due to having period pain. And there are also conditions that exacerbate that kind of pain. So birth control pills actually help with that. So that means you don't have to be having sex to benefit from birth control. Not only that, but there's more. It's also a treatment for polycystic ovarian syndrome. Not only that, but there's a lowered risk of anemia and a lower risk of some cancers. So, as I said before, you can have people who are not sexually active benefit from birth control because of what it does. That's what these women were arguing for. Not the, oh, I want to go and take birth control so I can have lots of sex on your dime. No, they actually have a lot of health benefits. But that said, if women want to take it to have lots of sex, what the hell's the problem? I don't have a problem with that. You shouldn't have a problem with that. And look, birth control is actually a lot cheaper and better than unwanted pregnancies and abortions. So, but look, anyway, he says, in the old days, we called those women sluts. In the old days, black people had to drink from different fountains. What's your point? Just because people used to do it doesn't mean that we should still be doing it, especially if it is wrong. And so it shouldn't matter. A woman's sex life or lack thereof, none of my goddamn business. It's none of our business. So why are people so involved? It goes back, of course, to the culture wars, controlling women, controlling women's bodies, right? Now, here's the thing, right? I think I've got one more clip of him talking. And, of course, again, it's about women, and this time about voting and why women vote for Democrats. If you're not already insulted by now, prepare to be.
Dare we say, here we go, Mr. Provocative. To the degree that the Republicans or conservatives or Mitt Romney has an issue with the women, maybe it isn't Mitt Romney or his positions, maybe it's the women. We all know that women tend to vote more liberal than men. It is the women who are guided by more emotion than reason. Oh, here we go, stereotyping females once again. What are you doing? Well, I'm not running for anything. I'm just making an observation. What I'm encouraging, what I'm beseeching, what I'm imploring the GOP not to do is pander to women. You need to do what Chris Christie did last night and simply lay out the difference in leadership in adults versus children and convince women to come over to the good side. You don't go over to their side. One of the reasons that the Democrats love the quote-unquote female issue is because they know women vote more liberally than men do. Now, you could say in a very, very sexist, misogynistic way that, well, that's because women just don't understand money. They don't understand. They don't handle finances. They're guided by emotion, not reason. Why? That's why they didn't have the vote for a full century in the country. Well, it is true that women cast more votes for Democrats. All I'm saying, I'm not validating the stereotypes. Far from. I'm married to a woman, for heaven's sakes. But I will say this: do not pander and move left to get the female vote. If my stereotype or hypothetical is true, simply convince them as Chris Christie did.
So do you hear that? I'm not saying these things are true, but if they're true, or if they're not true, well, then you just have to convince them like Chris Christie did. So saying all those stereotypes, and by the way, I'm not validating the stereotype. Oh, no, I'm not validating. Not at all. I'm married to a woman. No, go ahead and show your open sexism. Look, here's the thing. He continued saying, there's something going on here with women who are playing in that stereotype that they're not thinking. And he said, I know that's an awfully prejudicial because the only way that you can think is it a vote Republican. I'm not saying voting Republican, but when you reliably almost need your Democrat vote, which, by the way, a lot of people do, there are also a lot of people that need your Republican vote. Now, I talk about that team mentality all the fucking time, and that's problematic to me. I should do want people to look on the issues. I should want people to vote on the issues. And I think a lot of the reasons why a lot more women vote for Democrats, and especially for progressives, is you have policies from the GOP that are inherently anti-women. They're not voting for things like the Violence Against Women Act. They're making sure that people that, have restraining orders against them in domestic disputes still have their firearms. How do any of these things help women? They also take away women's health care and make it more expensive to get things like health care for a woman. The policies of the GOP are anti-women. I'm guessing if you change that, you might actually have more female votes. Just saying. But no, he says, is birth control really important to that important to you ladies? Is it really the most important thing that you get your condoms for free? Again, condoms actually are free, for one. And for two, we're talking about birth control pills. It's not condoms. God, this guy's an idiot. So he has no idea what he's talking about. And then he said, you've got Madonna running around with slutty outfits and Sandra Flick telling everybody, I'm not going to pay a dime for my diaphragm. Again, that's not the same thing. Is that really what's important? I can't believe that. And yet there's this gender gap every election cycle. Women go Democrat. As I just explained why. And he says, finally, you can be bought off for that? I mean, boy, that's all the other issues. The Hispanic problem. What problem? The social issues, class warfare, we can figure out a way to tackle those. This one, if you're that far down that road and you say you're a human being, I've got my suspicions. You're not. You're without a brain. You have no cognitive function whatsoever, if that's all it takes to buy you off. That is, I think, the most amount of projection I have ever seen. Why are you blindly voting Democrat when you could blindly vote Republican? You have no brain, women. It's all about what's in your uterus and that birth control. No, that's projection. All you care about is, I think mainly what's in your wallet. The insanity here and the projection is off the charts. So now here's the thing, right? So this guy, these are old. These are back from 2012. And the reason, as I said before, that I'm bringing them back up and that they're being brought back up is because he is running a competitive race. And what he's saying, and I love his excuse, I'm a radio host. I'm supposed to be provocative. Are you now? Look, if that's your brand, well then, look, what I do is I don't have a brand, okay? I don't run as some provocative shock jock, right? No, what you see here is what you get. Well, my opinions are my own. You, in saying that, are, for one, trying to distance yourself from your own opinions by saying, well, they're not actually my opinions. I'm just being controversial. Look at me, Mr. Controversy. Hey, now hit those subscribe numbers, man. I'm not doing that. What I'm trying to do is I actually give you an honest opinion. He probably is also giving you an honest opinion, but is not being honest about it and is not standing by it because it gets him into political trouble. He said before, I can say this stuff because I'm not running for office. Well, it looks like you did run for office. You won, and now you're desperately trying to hold on to that seat. It's nothing more than pure sexism and projection. And so that's all I have to say about that. Okay. I don't know if I had to add anything to it, but no, I think I pretty much got it. Okay, that's it for the show. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. Also consider, if you're a new viewer, subscribing to the channel for more videos. We will be doing a stream on Sunday, Get Vocal. So it's beta getvocal.com. I think I got that wrong. Hold on, let me get the right one. It's beta.getvocal.com. That's GETVOKL. I'll be doing that stream on there about 5 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. So if you guys have any topics before then, please let me know, because we will be setting that up soon. So hopefully you guys can see that, and I will have it routed through our YouTube so you can watch that as well here. Anyway, one more thing. Thank you for the super chats, of course. Also, if you want to support the channel, please go to patreon.com/TYTNation. I would like to be able to make enough to not have to worry about YouTube, because YouTube revenue has been terrible and will continue to be terrible. But anyway, that said, that's it. Have a great weekend. We'll see you guys on Sunday. Love you guys, and remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Sunday.